Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind. Courts are dismissing these cases with alarming speed. If you're the Trump campaign, some of these cases are getting dismissed within 48, 72 hours of being filed. And by the way, that is really rare to see. And beyond that, Jim, we're starting to see the Trump campaign and its surrogates dismiss their own lawsuits. We've now seen one lawsuit withdrawn. We saw another appeal withdrawn just the other day. That, I think, is a warning sign. You don't see that very often. When the Trump campaign is pulling back its own lawsuits, I think that's a flashing red light that they're in trouble.
Yes, I think it's a flashing red light that they are in trouble. And so when they're in trouble, what do? Hey, let's cheat. You know, this is so amazing. I mean, who cheats? Who cheats at elections? Let's see. Tom Hartman has a decent article today in Raw Story about who cheats in elections. You know, how many jelly beans are in the jar? How many? How many bubbles are in a bar of soap, right? And they called those literacy tests. Oh, my God. Now, you got 11-hour lines in Georgia, which, you know, I will never let you forget because we have to have another runoff January 5th, right? And so there's going to be an election on January 5th in the middle of the winter surge of COVID. All right. So who was responsible for running an election in Georgia? Why, it was the Georgia Secretary of State, Mr. Raffensperger. It was the governor of Georgia, Mr. Kemp. Okay? So who was responsible for 11-hour lines to try and deter or suppress or depress the turnout in this here election? And why in Georgia do they want to depress the turnout? Why? It's a red state, isn't it? It's a red state. Why would they not want their voters to vote? Because they knew that a 10-year project to get out the vote was about to come to fruition, and they knew it ever since Stacey Abrams lost by just a few tenths of a point to Mr. Kemp, okay? And she started a fair fight. And so you see all kinds of voter suppression, and it's always conducted by the Republicans, and that is why the Voting Rights Act needs to be reinstated, like forthwith. But that said, now that Georgia has engaged in an audit, a hand count, and they see that every single lawsuit that they've brought has been either lost, dismissed, or their own lawyers for the Trump campaign have withdrawn because they don't feel like getting sanctioned by the court, and they will if they lie or if they present witnesses who they know will lie. Then those lawyers, and this is what I was telling you right at the beginning, that there were law firms that were having these big meetings about, hey, how far can we actually go with these false claims, because we'll get sanctioned by the court. We won't be able to, ever be lawyers again. Maybe we'll lose our licenses, right? And I was telling you about these white shoe law firms like Porter Wright. Okay, so now I have to tell you, 9 cases were dropped on Friday. 9 cases were dropped on Friday. Also on Friday, 6 cases were lost. 6 cases were lost in 2 counties in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, where they seek to stop the certification. Okay, they lost. And today in Pennsylvania, there is one case scheduled today about whether or not the Trump campaign's case there should be dismissed. It may have been decided by now. I don't know. I have to check. But that's it. They brought 18 cases and none of them. So now what do they want to do? Now you have a South Carolina senator, or a parasite, named Lindsey Graham, South Carolina senator, calling Georgia, what? Calling Georgia's Secretary of State who has played along for long enough. And Lindsey Graham from South Carolina is asking the Secretary of State in another state, in Georgia, to throw out mail-in ballots in counties, whole counties, where maybe there was 1 or 2 ballots that Lindsay assumes wrongly that they couldn't verify a signature. That is lawlessness. That's coercion. That is unbelievable. And, you know, Lindsey Graham sits on the Judiciary Committee, the all-important Senate Judiciary Committee, who vets judges for confirmation purposes. So maybe all those judges that Lindsey Graham put on the courts better start asking themselves, what are we going to do about Lindsey Graham? This is an amazing story, all right? I could not, for the life of me, I swear to God, I can't even believe it. And the Secretary of State in Georgia, Mr. Raffensperger, is actually his family. He and his wife have received death threats, and he provided a couple of them to the press to read. The Hill printed, "You better not botch this recount. Your life depends on it." He told this to the Washington Post, and he produced the actual threat. This is sick.
The nicest thing that can be said about the Mitch McConnells of the world, for instance, is that they are just letting him have his tantrum and hoping it all goes away. That's the best, the very best, most charitable thing you can say about them. We have evidence tonight that that is not what is happening, that they are actually collaborating with Donald Trump in attempting to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. Because today, Georgia's Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, told the Washington Post he has come under increasing pressure from Republicans, including Senator Lindsey Graham, to throw away legal ballots.
What?
I'll quote. Graham asked whether Raffensperger had the power to toss all mail ballots in counties found to have higher rates of non-matching signatures. Raffensperger said he was stunned that Graham appeared to suggest that he find a way to toss legally cast ballots. Absent court intervention, Raffensperger doesn't have the power to do what Graham suggested as counties administer elections in Georgia. It sure looked like he was wanting to go down that road, he said. The Republican Secretary of State in Georgia says that South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee,
oh my God,
pressured him to dump legally cast ballots in a state where Donald Trump is losing by a relatively narrow margin. Now, Graham told a Wall Street Journal reporter tonight, quote, "That's ridiculous. What I'm trying to find out was, how do you verify signatures from mail-in ballots in these states? I thought it was a good conversation. I'm surprised to hear him characterize it that way." Okay, but what on earth was the senator from South Carolina and the chair of the Judiciary Committee doing talking to a state election official in Georgia amidst a presidential recount?
What is South Carolina's senator doing talking to Georgia's Secretary of State in the first place? In the second place, does Lindsey Graham think he's bulletproof? Because he is the one that confirmed or helped confirm these judges, and so that if these judges ever have to sit in judgment of Lindsey Graham, some favor would be exchanged. This is craziness. This is absolute mass madness. Now, of course, Lindsey Graham is denying it, as you heard there, saying, "Oh, well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, I just wanted to know, how do you verify signatures? How do you do it?" Well, the Secretary of State in Georgia, Raffensperger, told Lindsey Graham how they verify signatures. He actually told him. Not only do they verify signatures, but they also have photographs of the voters' driver's licenses, so they can verify their identity. There are multiple ways to verify that a voter is that voter, and the Secretary of State of Georgia has been doing that, and he is a freaking Republican. And you know what else is really weird? Doug Collins was on the ballot against, he was running for the Senate seat against Loeffler, and he lost. He's not challenging the results in Georgia. He's heading up the recount in Georgia. What? Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.